This is Decades for March 17th. Today in 1975, at the age of 29, the goddess of pop, Cher, graced the cover of Time magazine. Before becoming a pop sensation, Cher's voice could be heard on a number of Phil Spector albums as a backup singer. She's only one of 6 people to have achieved both a #1 single and an Oscar for acting. She also directed a television special for HBO titled If These Walls Could Talk. See the multi-talented icon in this interview with Dick Cavett now, only on Decades.
Thank you. This is an overflow crowd. You must have known that I'm here today. And someone else is too. You know how some celebrities have this wonderful thing of only needing one name. Liberace leaps to mind, Houdini, Halston. But when it comes to a star of the feminine gender, I guess nobody fulfills the promise of a name better than the one and the only Cher, which brings up the point. Is she really one? Or is she many? Here's what I mean. Perhaps these glamour photographs by Harry Langdon will illustrate my point. There's Cher in an authentic costume from her role as a Salvation Army mistress. Let's see, here she is in a, let's see, I think that was a Greenwich Village wedding. Let's see, what else do we have? Here she is posing for the Susan B. Anthony dollar. And here she is after trying to walk through a tough neighborhood in an evening gown. Here's a very lovely picture of her. It's still another sort. She has so many, and here she is expressing sheer loveliness, which is not easy, as we all know. But which of those is the real Cher? I am willing to bet, knowing her as briefly as I do, that she's all of these and more. She will be my guest tonight in person, not just in stills, so I'll have the opportunity to find out. Cher has said goodbye, you might say, to Lotus Land for the moment. She's here in New York, about to open on Broadway in a play entitled Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean, in which she co-stars with Sandy Dennis and Karen Black, with none other than the legendary Robert Altman as the director. And that's only one of a lot of things that she has been doing and that I would like to talk to her about. If I don't shut up, she'll probably leave, so will you welcome the lady that People magazine dubbed the Queen of Flash, just plain Cher. What do you mean, what is Lotus Land?
I asked him what Lotus Land was, and obviously Lotus Land is Los Angeles, but now
Yeah.
Why did you call it Lotus Land?
I think that goes back to some writer of the 30s who dubbed it Lotus Land. Or maybe it was a typo and it was Louts Land. Louts Land.
Louts Landing, probably.
Louts Landing, that's
yes.
what it was, and they got it all messed up. May I,
Call me Cher?
May I call you Cher?
Yes.
How'd you know I was going to say that?
I don't know.
Because everybody does.
No.
What does it say on your passport, come to think of it?
It says Cher.
And don't they say, pardon me, ma'am, but, part of your name seems to be missing.
I had one problem getting into Tahiti. The man was very unhappy that I didn't have a last name and made me wait and went through all of my luggage and ripped open a teddy bear that I was bringing back from Australia. I guess the name just kind of inspired him to look for other things. I wasn't really sure.
Why didn't you say, well, Cher is my last name?
No, he didn't really care about anything. He just was very unhappy that I didn't have a last name because everyone who'd ever been to Tahiti had one.
And he took it out on your teddy bear?
Yes, he took it out on my teddy bear.
Why do I associate you with lots of balls may I rephrase? Can we start this show over?
No, I love it.
Do you know what I'm referring
All right,
to?
but now, only if I can
Please
ask
get me
you.
off of this.
Balls of
It
what?
has to do with magic, Slidini. Do you remember the thing we did once years ago?
Yes.
And Slidini did this great balls and cups and balls
Yes.
thing with you, and suddenly...
I'd rather sit there and watch you squirm because this is fun.
Yes, it's lots of fun for me, too. You know how dumb you feel when you say something like that and realize that well over 80 people are watching?
Right.
Very scary. Speaking of scary, here it comes, the inevitable question, but you're about to open on Broadway. Now, are your nerves shot about this? Is it frightening, all those images, the Great White Way, opening night, and all that jazz?
This is a very strange thing to me. We've been doing this play now. We've been doing the play for over a week, and I understand that opening is, I think that we could never open and be very successful in the play, but you have to open, and I think that's going to make me very nervous. I probably won't be very good opening night.
I guess it is a nightmare. Whoever invented opening night ought to be shot. They ought to say,
Right.
you do previews, and on any night within the first week, the Times critic
That
can
would
come
be,
if he
yes,
wants
I think
to,
that would be
and
wonderful. It'd be a
maybe
lot
the
easier.
next week somebody else
Or
can
even any
come.
night that you just didn't know about it, but to have everybody come opening night and
Yeah.
do that, it's a little bit upsetting.
And all those telegrams and flowers and all those things that are well meant, but you don't want them to remind you.
I like doing
it's
the play,
opening
though.
night.
The audiences have been wonderful. It's really been exciting. I would say it's about the most exciting thing that I can remember doing.
It is a thrill, isn't it? I did a Broadway play some years ago, and I couldn't wait to get to the theater every night. It was just, there's nothing like it. You could stand there and say,
Also, if you're not doing well, it's pretty terrifying, too. Like, a couple of nights, we've had, like, strange moments, and you're just out there. There's no retaking it, starting over. You just kind of have to sweat through it, and that's also really interesting.
well, is it true that you've never stepped on a stage before in a play?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I'm sure much will be made of that, but there's no reason to, really.
Not really.
I mean, you've been on many
felt very,
stages.
yes, I felt very comfortable, and it's like playing a game to me, and it's like playing.
It is. It's make-believe.
I came to New York originally to take lessons, to do a play. It didn't ever occur to me that while I was signing up to take lessons, I would get a play.
Yeah, you have to be careful of getting work when you don't
yes.
want it. But you have studied acting. You've been on stages. You have presence, charisma, all of that. So it isn't as if you were some...
I studied acting when I was 16 for about 4 months, and I came here. I had 2 lessons with Lee Strasberg before I got this play. And I came here to do an audition for Joe Papp, and while I was doing the audition, I got a call from Bob Altman.
And that was it. Strasberg's a fascinating enigma to everybody who knows him.
I'm crazy about him.
Where did he start with you? Can you remember what his first observation was?
He didn't. You know what he said? He said, "You know too much," and walked by me. It was like, someone said, "Cher's real interested in taking classes," and he looked at me, he said, "You know too much," and just turned around and walked out of the room. He had to get something to eat. It was lunchtime, and and then that night I went to Anna's house. That's his wife, and he was there, and they just started telling old stories. And then the next day I just audited. I never really even got a chance to take classes by myself. I just audited the classes that he was giving, but I felt like I was learning a lot just by watching.
And it isn't as if you came out of a desk job to your first performing.
Except people have a very strange opinion. I'm sure that I must have contributed to this, that my personal life somehow negates the fact that I might be talented, because so much has been written about what I've been doing after I've been working that a lot of people forget what it was that they liked about me originally, What is it that she does, She gets married a lot, or she,
But
she
do they
wears...
hold it against you that you might go to a disco or a party to unwind after?
Someone said to me the other night, someone very close to me said, "Cher, I don't want you to go to Studio 54 until after the play opens." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, because we want you to be serious." So I won't tell you the expletives that I said to him first, but after I got through telling him immediately off the top of my head what I thought of that idea, I said, I am me, like it or not. The people who like me and who like my work are going to like me no matter what, if I go dancing or not, And so I don't know if being on Broadway or if being serious means that you have to be dull or change your lifestyle. I guess I'll never be what it is that everybody wants me to be.
And when Henry Kissinger went to Studio 54, they didn't make him stop negotiating or figure that he would go frivolously to the Middle East or whatever.
I guess I give the appearance of being a very frivolous person, but I think that I'm capable of being very frivolous and being very intense, and so I can just never quite stick with one too long.
Yeah, and the one can relax you for the other, too. There is a trap, though, in if you haven't been in a play and done everything else, almost everything else you do, you only do once and get it over with. A television show, thank God it's over, and you can relax until the nightmare hits you again next week if it's a weekly show. And when you do a play and get through it, you think, oh, that's over. And there's a trap to being going to a late night party and then thinking, uh-oh,
Yes.
I got to
did
do
that
it
the other
twice
night.
tomorrow.
Yes, I stayed out until 7 o'clock in the morning, the night that we taped Night of 100 Million Stars, or
Oh, yeah.
you know, that thing.
Yeah.
And I was just having the best time. Elizabeth Taylor and I ended up at a place called Paulson's, little teeny joint, and stayed there well into the night. And I arrived home. I drove a cab home. I don't know why the cab driver let me do this, but
You
he
drove
just,
a cab?
yes. But I drove a cab home at 7 o'clock that morning and had the
Lord.
time of my life. But last night's performance was really difficult.
Did he know you had had a little tiny joint, or did I misunderstand you?
No, we went to a little joint. No, Paulson's is a little tiny joint.
Oh, I see.
Anyway, no, and we got into this cab, and the cab driver said that he was not really a cab driver, that he was a comedy writer, and proceeded to tell me about this. He told me a joke that he said he had written, but I'd heard it about he went to a Chinese restaurant that was Chinese-German, but an hour after he'd eaten, he was hungry for power. And I said, you know what, that's a terrible joke, let me drive. He pulled over to the right, got out, and I drove back.
Is that in fact a terrible joke?
No, I thought it was very funny. As a matter, at 7 o'clock in the morning, it was hysterical.
Did someone tell you to say this?
No, I swear to God, this is what happened.
Do you know why I look disturbed?
You wrote that joke.
Yes. That was one of my most stolen jokes when I was doing an act.
Well, there's a cab driver who stole that joke.
I did that joke, and it appeared the next week when some cheap comic stole my joke and did it on the Sullivan Show, and I was crushed.
Did you
'Cause I
really
thought it
write
was a
that?
very
This is
good
very
joke,
funny. I
yeah.
mean, but that's what happened to me.
Adolph Wong was the name of the proprietor of the restaurant, and I filled on it. And the proper delivery of the punchline is Chinese-German food is very good. The only problem is an hour later you're hungry for power. And that's the way most of the people who stole it did it.
Well, this was just a guy that was a cab
Someone
driver.
put you up to this.
I swear to God,
you
one thing
really?
you might find about me, which is bad, but I always tell the
You're
truth.
frightening honesty.
Yes,
I'm
it's
afraid I'm
terrible.
going to be the victim of it at any moment.
No, but that's what happened. It was fun. I mean, I'm having the time of my life in New York. I realize that I don't like Los Angeles very much. The only thing that I like about it is that I've never had to be there very long.
Oh, yeah. In small, it's a.
It's
You
a
wouldn't
wonderful-
want to live there, but it's a bad place to visit.
No, it's fun
Is
to
that what
go
you're
there.
saying?
No, I don't think I'll be going back there for a very long time, and I've lived there my entire
That's
life.
right. When this show is seen, you will have a little trouble going back there.
No, I mean, everyone knows. I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, everybody knows, my views about almost everything, so it doesn't make any difference, really.
That's right. And everybody raps Los Angeles to some degree or other. What about stamina? Are you working out for this? That's 8
Yes.
performances a week is no picnic.
Yes, I go to the gym every day, except the last 2 days,
Uh-huh.
because I came here, and yesterday I couldn't quite get up.
I don't think we know a lot about you as a kid. There are probably people who assume that in the cradle you had a hairdresser and your nails coiffed or whatever they do to nails. And it wasn't that, but it was somewhere between that and a Charles Dickens
Yes.
childhood, from what I know.
It was a very bizarre childhood. It's strange. I was much of a daydreamer. Didn't stay, the moment I found out that there were movies, that's kind of my mind was like focused,
Mm-hmm.
and when I was a very small girl, I thought I was an angel.
Literally?
Yes, I really literally thought that I was an angel. Then, I had very many strange thoughts like that, and somehow I could just never get into regular thinking. It was just too boring. Didn't like school very much. Wasn't very popular at all. I just wasn't into it. I was kind of into thinking about what I would be when I grew up.
And it wasn't the typical home scene, was it? Wasn't your father
I never met my
on the
father
road
until
a
I
lot,
was
or-
11.
What?
My mother was divorced from him when I was 2, and then I never met him until I was 11.
Ah. What's that like? I can't imagine that. Is it awkward? Do you...
Yes, I was kind of interested in meeting him,
Mm-hmm.
and that sounds bizarre, but when you've never known someone, you don't have great emotional ties. And when I saw him, I could see why my mother looked at me strangely sometimes, because I'd never even seen a picture of him. And my mother, I'd get a certain expression on my face, and my mother would look at me for a minute longer, And when I met him, I realized why, because my father and I looked very much alike, and everybody in my family is blonde except me. Now, even my children are blonde, and I was wondering where I came from, because no one really looked like me in my family. And then I met my father, and I realized, that was the person that I really looked like.
Were you cordial? Was it?
Well, he had $40 alligator shoes on, and I was just amazed that someone could spend that much money on a pair of shoes. That was my first. I looked at him, I said, God, those are beautiful. And he said, yes, they're alligator. I mean, that's a strange thing to say to your father, but it seemed to be appropriate at the time.
Did you feel you looked like him when you saw him?
Yes, I did. I knew, I mean, he walked in the door, and I knew that I looked like him. He was very dark. He's very dark. He is from Turkey. And everybody else in my family is very fair.
I think it'd be more like meeting an uncle or something, really, than a parent.
I remember that my mother had my hair done for it, so I thought this must be something, because I think I'd only had my hair done 2 times in my life, you know? And I was real excited about it. And then I met him, and I didn't really know what to say. We just talked for a little while, and we kind of became friends.
I read I think I did, a fascinating thing about you, where you thought, as a kid, that you were put on Earth with a certain destiny.
Well, I had 2. First, I thought you were going to say something about Mount Rushmore, which you didn't, which now I probably have to say later. But
okay, I know that. But
you know that one, yes.
I love that.
I was doing a radio show, and this guy said off the radio, he was very nice. He has an English accent. He does television in Los Angeles, but I don't remember what his name is right now. Anyway, he said, I want to ask you this on the air because it's so embarrassing. He said, and I know it's probably not true, but did you really think that Mount Rushmore was a natural phenomenon? And I said, yes, I did.
Michael Jackson?
Yes, it was Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
So my sister said, Cher, you know, you're real sweet, but that's real dumb. Don't ever tell anybody that you thought.
You know, if a joke writer wrote that, it would be a brilliant joke. She's so dumb, she thought Mount Rushmore was a natural phenomenon.
Yeah. I also thought that the moon was the backside of the sun, and was very upset when we were having eclipses because I didn't know what the hell was happening, you know?
The moon isn't the backside of the sun? I have this nightmare that I'll have to take a general knowledge test in public someday,
right.
You know, how many senators from each state, and why does the moon get bigger and smaller, and all those things that you assume you know, but turns out you don't. Have you ever had a time after you got rich, sorry to say that vulgar word, certainly comparatively rich from what you were as a kid, where you could feel it slipping away, or thought, Lord...
Even as we speak.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
When Sonny and I first made money, it was amazing because we had probably been thrown out of everywhere. I mean, if there'd been Jack in the Box at that time or McDonald's, I'm sure we would have been thrown out of there, you know? There was just, I mean, we were thrown out of every place because we did look really strange, and people kind of today forget how strange it was to look the way we did at a time when the Beatles even had these kind of cute little haircuts and round, you know, suits. Everyone was wearing suits, and Sonny and I were going around in, you know, dress Eskimo boots and bobcat furs and things like that. And I used to buy 2 of everything, like 2 electric fry pans and 2 of everything, because I was so afraid that it would go and I would at least still have this extra one, you know? You do strange things. I mean, we dreamed about when we would get rich of going into a Cadillac dealership with a bag full of money, and while they were throwing us out, say, well, we'll take those 2 and pay cash for it, you know? Of course, we never did it because after we got money, we didn't want Cadillacs, you know? We weren't, that was like, Cadillacs, no.
Oh, yes.
Right, but I remember one time, I don't know why this is happening, but it is, so say something funny.
What's that? Chinese German food. An hour later, you're...
Hungry for Adolph Wong.
They've forgotten, yeah.
I went into a dress store in Los Angeles, and I saw this really beautiful Rudy Gernrich outfit. And the lady was helping someone, and I said, excuse me, could you, and she said, Miss, I'm very busy. And I said, okay, fine. So I waited for a few minutes. She was finished. I said, excuse me, could you tell me, she said, you know, that's a very expensive outfit. Mm-hmm. And I said, how many colors does it come in? And she said, 4. I said, I'll take it in every color. And she said, do you want to try it on? I said, no. And I paid for it, and I went home and I cried, and I never wore the outfits. They were terrible. But, you know, I was so upset with the idea that she just didn't want to know about me. And I did look strange, you know.
Just assumed that you didn't belong in there.
Yes, and I probably didn't. I mean, it was really a boring store now that I think about it. But, but I you know, it was just, I think that one of the worst things that can happen in anyone's life is to be liked or disliked for what your apparent look is, you know? Your apparent color, your apparent status, your apparent anything, because people, it's a terrible thing. I mean, when I was little, we were very poor, and I realized that people were judging me on something that had absolutely nothing to do with what I really was as a person. It was just like, poor, next, you know?
Yeah, it's the way you can feel what race prejudice would feel like in an ironic way.
So that's something that when you're a child is really difficult. You don't know how to deal with that at all because you haven't gotten any of the calluses that you grow up to get on yourself.
That thing of the dresses rings a bell. A friend of mine years ago was in a snootiest of stores in Manhattan, decades ago, and the clerk was very rude to a very plainly dressed little old lady and said, "These are very expensive things. Perhaps you would prefer it someplace cheaper to shop." And she said, "No, I'll take this purse." And he tried to talk her out of it. It was very nasty. And someone else overheard this and came over and said, "Do you know on whom you're waiting, since this is the last time you'll be working here?" And it was Mrs. Henry Ford. That's a kind of a nice story.
It happens. I mean, that happens all the time. I mean, it's just, you know, you never know who you're dealing with, so it's always really better to be kind.
Yeah, you should be nice to them for the right reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's really
even if it weren't
yeah.
Mrs. Henry Ford, you should have been fired. What was that thing you thought you had a destiny, that you were placed on Earth?
At different times, I had different destinies. I was always a woman of destinies. One time I thought I was here to cure polio. I was about 10 at that time. Mm-hmm. I was very pissed when Jonas Salk got there before I could grow up and become a doctor. Then I've had different, somehow I haven't been able to mature quite yet. And so I always feel that I'm really here. I have a very large purpose, you know, to do something. Mm-hmm. And I keep putting it off. I think, okay, in 10 years I'll do that, because right now I'm just having a fun time screwing off and just being frivolous.
Did you know your, what'll I call it, anti-drug stance actually hurt your career, or was that been...
Yes, people have talked about that. Yes, it did.
How so?
Because people were really, in the late 60s, people were really into drugs, and they wanted people that they liked to be really into drugs.
Yeah. So how would you compare yourself with Janice, for example? Would you have anything to talk about?
I'm alive. That's about the only, you know? That's how I would compare myself. Yes, yeah. And I think that, I mean, as we all know, that drugs played a big part in that. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, I don't have any kind of moral question about drugs. I just have the feeling that people can't cope with them correctly. If people could cope with drugs, you know, it would be a different story, but I don't know very many people that really can handle them. Usually drugs have a way of handling you, and that's the part that I object to.
You don't like to give up your freedom, maybe, then, to them in some way?
No, and I also don't want to hurt my body. I really don't want to hurt my body. You know, I don't smoke for the same reason, and I loved smoking, but I gave it up because I realized that I was really not doing myself any great favor.
Yeah. Did you have a technique of quitting, or did you go to one of those places where they beat it out of you?
You will not smoke. No, I got pregnant with Elijah, and I just thought it would be better for both of us if I stopped.
Yeah. Who is Elijah?
I don't know. No, Elijah is my son.
I didn't recognize his name because it's usually a two-part name.
Elijah Blue, yes.
Elijah Blue, yes, that's right.
He has many names. The dreaded Ullman. I mean, we call him a whole bunch of different things.
Does Elijah Blue play with Moon Unit Zappa?
No. No, Elijah Blue is, well, Elijah's from the Bible. Moon Unit is a totally different thing.
It's very, yeah. I can't stand the fact that we're out of time. Oh. So I'm not going to stop.
Okay.
We'll just have to go right into the next program.
All right.
Hey, let's do this some more.
Okay.
Okay, but we're out of time for now. Cher, you're a pleasant surprise to all those people who thought you were dumb enough to think that Mount Rushmore was a... Cher, see you next time. What's that?
We applaud the audience. They'd sat for 5.5 hours. We thought they deserved it. Remember, we were all applauding.
Oh, at the night of 100 stars, yes. Wasn't that a mind-blowing experience, to coin a phrase?
Yes. It blew me out.
Yeah. It put my head in a whole nother bag.
I mean, you were either running into Helen Hayes or Marcella Mastroianni or Elizabeth Taylor or, I mean, Paul Newman. I was just like that.
Night of 100 Stars, I suppose almost everybody's heard of by this time.
It was 268 or 228, something like that.
Yes, well, I think Alexander Cohen had an interesting psychology going from the beginning, in that it got to the point where if you weren't among the 100,
Yes.
it began to be that you weren't among the other people wanted in and so on. But it was fascinating to see all those people. And it got to the point where you forgot what the real world was like, because in the real world you can turn and see a face you don't recognize. And backstage there would be Jimmy Stewart talking to Orson Welles, stumbling over Paul Newman, as you said, and there were Alice Faye and Joel McCrea and Betty Davis, and it was astounding. And I didn't realize it was you, because they had other people dressed in that way that you were, which people will see on television. Was it rude of me to come up to you in that fantastic costume and say trick or treat?
No. Which one? Was that the black one or the bride?
The one with the pointed...
The bride, yes.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't rude. It was just very you.
Yeah. Sometimes they're synonymous.
Yes.
Cher, you have a reputation for an almost frightening honesty that some people find disarming. People always complain in this business of people not being real, and then when they are, it shakes them
They don't
up.
like it, right?
That's right. Did you miss at all the big show that you had before? Do you ever miss that, spending all week doing the big production and so on?
I sometimes, actually, I don't really ever think about it. Sometimes it was fun to be with the people that I was working with, but we did it for a long time, really, 6 years, you know, and it's a lot to do, and it's not what I wanted to do forever. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really happy doing this now, and I like to do different things. I don't like to just stay in one particular thing, and I did it. I mean, I really did it, and I enjoyed it, and now I'm finished.
Can anybody truly enjoy weekly television of that size, of a huge show like that? Is it sheer hell, or is it
Well,
joy?
it's difficult. You have to kind of give up. You have to give up your life outside of it, because an hour variety, you're learning. You know, I would spend every Wednesday night. I would be at Bob's Mackey's for 3.5 hours. After I got through with my work, which I got through with at about 7, and I'd be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you just get a little bit fried. You know, you don't really know what you're doing it for after a while.
Yeah. So you're a little zombie-like, wondering what's going on.
And you want to do a good job. You really want to do a good job, but sometimes it's really difficult to do a good job, and then all of a sudden you're seeing the end product up there, and it's not really very good, and you think, well, why did I start this in the first place, you know?
Yeah.
So on the Sonny and Cher show, it was very fun and a lot easier, because Sonny took half of the load, and we had all the other guys that were on the show, and plus 2 guests. It was a lot more difficult when I did my own show.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting to hear, because some people say, oh, it was just wonderful, I loved every minute of it. And
I loved it. I mean, I hate people that become famous and then start to complain, you know? It's
Yeah.
like, I can't stand all these people bothering me, and, you know, I mean, you know, which is ridiculous. But sometimes work, you know, is hard. It's like everybody else's work. Sometimes you just don't like it, or sometimes you're just tired, you know? You don't want to sell shoes, you know? Sometimes I don't want to sing.
That's right.
But I love my work. I mean, I would do my work for nothing.
That's a real tribute to the business, I suppose. Or no, it's a tribute to you, that you like what you do.
I
feel
love
almost guilty
it.
about getting paid for it?
No, I don't feel guilty at all. I love money.
So I thought I saw a possibility for a savings here.
No, I love getting paid for it, and I think it's a ridiculous amount of money, and I'm just so happy that I can make it.
Yeah.
And I would do it for free. I would do it for free, but I like getting paid for it.
As long as they're going to pay you what they
Right, what the hell, you might as well do it.
You talked last time about how your stand against drugs actually hurt you in a way, because it was unpopular stand to take at a time when rock, I don't really think of you as rock in the sense of acid rock, but a large segment of the population that bought records wanted pro-drug music and personal attitude, I suppose. You didn't have that. Did any manager say to you, I think we're going to have to go in the other direction, and can you, pose with a joint or something?
No, nobody ever said that. I mean, Sonny was really, just deadly opposed to it. So Sonny really was managing us too, so no one could really tell him, and he wouldn't do anything he didn't want to do.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous. I mean, you really shouldn't do in this business anything that you really don't believe in. I mean, sometimes you have to, bend what you think is right, I've bent sometimes, and the older I get, the more I really feel that I got to stick to what I really believe is right.
Yeah. How old have you gotten?
35.
Recently?
No, God, I'm going to be 36. This is terrible. I was 35 in May.
Now, there are people out there thinking it's rude of me to ask, but I feel that confronted with your honesty, I'm a little nonplussed, because I don't know whether to take advantage of it, as some people
go
would.
ahead. Take advantage of it. Let me tell you something. You can ask anything, but I will answer anything, so just be prepared, because you might get the answer to a question.
That's the scariest offer I've ever had. But I don't really want to take advantage of your honesty somehow. I think you should take advantage of people's hypocrisy. If I did, I would probably say something like, the night of 100 stars, how many of them had you slept with? No, I'm sorry, Bill Buckley would say that.
Right.
I wouldn't ever say that.
Unfortunately, I hadn't slept with any of them.
Come on.
I swear to God. And if you believe that, there's a bridge. No. No, actually, let me be careful now.
Remember that.
One.
Really?
Yes, one. God, I didn't think I had, but one.
All right, now what is the obvious next question?
Why? Because he was there. It's like mountain climbing. Why?
You
because
promised.
I was young and I didn't know any better.
You promised you would keep our secret. Oh, that is funny, though. What do you wonder about me in terms of...
The night of 100 stars, how many have you slept with?
Come on, that's been asked already. Well, all right,
Isn't
none.
that funny? I didn't even realize it, because I told you none back when we were talking about backstage, but I just realized that that was not the truth.
Same with me. I napped with one. Do you have any nightmares?
Yes.
I'm fascinated with dreams and nightmares.
Not long ago, I dreamt I was taking a French test and I was stealing the answers from Sandy, except she didn't know the right answers either.
Sandy Dennis, who's in the play with you.
Yes.
Well, that is...
I was trying to copy down Sandy's answers, but I realized in the middle that her answers were wrong. And it's scary for me to come and do something that I absolutely know nothing about in a town where I don't even get to go, like, let's say, to New Haven or, you know, something like that. I don't get to go try it out. I'm just right out there. And I had a choice to either do it or not do it. But even though I made the choice to do it, it doesn't mean that I'm not scared out of my mind.
So you're willing to admit that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with being scared.
No. Should we analyze that dream?
No.
Because, you know, dreams are always disguised. You've read Freud, and you know
Yes,
that...
but I don't think that was very disguised at all. Bob was the teacher, the French teacher.
Oh, no, no, no. The dream means, because they're so disguised, that you want to buy 200 pfennigs worth of Braunschweiger and don't have the nerve. See, that's a switch on the Freudian. Well, that's about it.
That's a half an hour?
No, no. No, but Maximilian Schell was here one time, and he pointed out that he never let a pause happen in television, and that when you do, people get very uneasy, and he made me hold hands with him for 1 minute and stare into his eyes.
That must have been an experience.
Yeah, excruciating. But fascinatingly proved a point that silence can be very expressive and so forth. Have you ever had, Cher, the true actor's dream, the cliche actor's dream that almost every actor gets, that he can't imagine how he or she got to opening night without learning any of the lines? That the makeup won't go on, that they've started the play upstairs, that maybe if you learn a couple of the lines now and you spill the powder on you and you're sweating and so on. Have you ever had that one?
No. And God willing, I won't have it.
Let me describe it to you.
No.
Could you give us a tour of your body in terms of tattoos? Don't you have a few?
Yes, I do. How would you like? What kind of a tour would you like? Would you like the cheap tour, or would you like the expensive tour?
The guided one, I think.
Well, I mean,
no, but I mean, every man, the first thing he wants a woman is tattoos.
Of
and so
course.
I thought it might be interesting to know why one gets them.
I don't know why. It just seemed like the thing to do. I'm very impulsive, and I have 3 tattoos now.
I can't see any of them.
Well, that's because you can't see any of them. I have one tattoo here on my ankle of a chrysanthemum. It's a Japanese tattoo.
Was it done by a Japanese artist?
No, it was done by an American artist that studied it with a Japanese master. Tattooing in Japan, as you know, is a little bit different. It's not like Mom and, you know, Hell's Angels and all that. People are very serious about their tattoos there. And so I have this one here, and then I have a beautiful tattoo about here of a, what is that? A tiger lily, a lily. It's beautiful.
Oh.
And then I have one tattoo behind me.
How far?
Very far behind
Way
me.
back there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is flowers and a butterfly.
Is it excruciatingly painful? Or
No, I don't find it painful at all. But I don't know, some people, I mean, you know, it's not as strange as people might think. I mean, in the history of man, tattooing has been more the common thing to do than the uncommon thing to do. I mean,
it was unusual not to have one.
Right. So, and I don't know what makes people. I mean, I can understand people. Like my friend said, we're never going to get to a Jewish cemetery now because it's against the religion to be tattooed. And if you're
you can't
Jewish.
Be in consecrated ground or something if you've been tattooed.
I don't really know why. I would never recommend it to anybody, but since this body belongs to me for however long I'm here, I figured that I liked it, and I don't really know why. It just seems beautiful to me in a strange way. And I mean, I'm sure it's crazy. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't make any sense to anybody, and I wouldn't recommend it, but I liked it.
What do you recommend? If you're
I don't recommend anything. I recommend Levi jeans. That's about the only thing that I can recommend.
The old jeans.
Yes.
Yeah, but it put a lot of people out of work. You know, you were talking the other night about how people have images of you, of what you're like, and some people think you're a freak, and some people think you're zany, and some people probably think you're drug-riddled, and all those things that they think of as being, in any sense, connected with the music world, rock, and so on. When I say do you have any morality, I don't mean it funny-like, but do you have a moral code for yourself?
Yes.
In terms of...
it's not one that I think about all the time, but I try and be nice to people, and I try and tell the truth, and I think that those are the only things. I mean, not that I'm nice constantly, because God knows I'm a bitch on wheels sometimes, you know, you just are. But I really try to be nice, and I try to always tell the truth, and always think about what I'm doing and make sure that it's, you know, that I really can do it with good conscience.
What about all the tremendous opportunities in the business that almost nobody can resist when they get as successful and famous and are as attractive as you are to freak out? Did you have any tendencies toward that? I mean, today, morality means, if you're conservative, it means you only have an affair with one person at a time.
I was reading something. I did that People magazine, and this man wrote in those letters. I was really interested to read one of the letters, and the guy said, you know, that I was promiscuous in a way, which I thought to be kind of hysterical, but I'm not very promiscuous, and I don't know why. Sometimes I'd like to be, but it just doesn't work out that way, you know? It just doesn't. I can't just meet someone and shake their hands and say, all right, where's the bedroom or the floor or whatever, you know? But you know, I mean, I don't really care what anybody else does. I mean, it's not, you know, whatever people do is their own business. I just kind of, I try and kind of stay very straight, because I'm afraid that I might have a tendency to be crazy if I ever really went off. But then I don't think I really would be.
Right, did I hear you say one time I inherited a sort of Puritan streak from my old man?
No, I don't think I don't know what I inherited from him. I think I inherited from my mother, who was married 8 times. The two don't make a lot of sense, but my mother is kind of puritanical in a way.
Yeah. Could you ever save anybody else, do you think? You knew Janis, I'm sure, and maybe Jimi Hendrix and some of the other people who bit the dust in the drug years. Did you ever feel any obligation to try to straighten them out, or?
No, I really don't. No, I don't. It's like kind of none of my business. I mean, if someone was like a really close friend, I've had a few close friends that I finally just said, you know, you make me sick. Get yourself together. People can really, I mean, people can only do something that they want to do, and it's really none of my business to make people do anything that they don't, you know. If you want to take drugs, that's what they want to do, and they will do it. No, I mean, all your good intentions don't mean anything.
Yeah. Where should we really put you, in what category? I don't think of you as a rock star in the sense of, although you music with a rock beat, you were never really acid rock, or even several steps down from acid rock, I suppose. Do you think of yourself as a pop singer who was also popular, happened to be popular in the rock era?
Yeah, kind of. It's strange. It's hard to put me anywhere, and yet I'm here.
Yeah. Can you write?
Yes.
I have that feeling.
I'm really good.
Yeah.
I'm really a good writer. I think someday when I get tired and slow down, I might do that.
What would you write? It's fiction?
I think I would like to write... I don't know. First, I would write something that I really knew about. And I wrote a television show that I did, and I wrote a lot of that, and I was really pleased I got into the Writers Guild, which for me was like the best card I have, because you really have to write something to get in there. And I don't know what I could do. I'm very interested in religion, and I think someday I might write something about that.
Interested in it? Without practicing it?
I practice it in my own way. I don't belong to an organized religion, just because, to me, now I know I'm not going to make a lot of friends with this, but to me, organized religion is kind of like country clubs that people belong to, you know? And I just think that people are all... This is going to sound really weird, but I feel like I'm every person that I've ever met, old people, young people. I feel really connected to every person I've ever known. And I feel that religion is one of the single most causes to divide people up for no real reason.
Yes, it's often a way of dividing or excluding people.
I just don't believe that there's any real reason for it. I'm sure if God exists in a certain way that we feel that he does exist, I think that he doesn't really care one way or another what religion we belong to. You know, I can't imagine that if you're not a Catholic, you're not going to get into heaven, if there's such a place, you know, or that a good woman or a good human being is any better because they belong to a certain faith. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
If you knew you had a fatal disease, do you think you would pray?
Sure. I mean, I don't have a fatal disease now, I don't think, and I pray.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're religious in that sense, but not in the organized way. Did you get involved in the censorship fights? There were some on your show, weren't there? Didn't they cut a big number one time that was too sexy or something?
Yes, Raquel Welch and I were friends before that number, and then after that number we were no longer friends. But there wasn't anything that I could do because she was touching herself, you know, and she's got so much to touch that they got very nervous and cut out the number.
It's hard for her not to, isn't
yes.
it? Yeah. And the censor said that's too erotic?
Yes.
Yeah? Whose idea was it then? I mean, whose job was it then to fight for it? Did Sonny have to go and meet with them and
No,
say
this was the
silly?
Cher show, so it wasn't. But I called Freddie Silverman. I did as much as I could, but, you know, it's crazy.
Why would she not be friends with you as a result of that?
Because she thought that I had something to do with it and thought that I could have saved the number, but I just couldn't. I mean, you know, I did what I could and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, they cut numbers on me. I mean, they wouldn't let me say lover in a sketch. I had to say boyfriend. And I said, what is the difference?
Well, didn't they see things at rehearsal? I mean, shouldn't they have seen that Raquel was, or did she fail to touch herself at rehearsal?
Well, I guess she failed to touch herself. Well, she was wearing something different in rehearsal than she wore on the actual filming.
It's funny to think of the language barriers that there were back then. I can remember
I
when
was the first woman to show her belly button on television. That doesn't seem like a big thing.
Lord, I forgot that. Yes. It's the biggest news since...
That will probably be on my tombstone, no matter what else I do. That'll be it.
Right, you're the woman who broke the belly button barrier in television. And yet you haven't seen that many of them since, as I recall. I
No,
guess
but
that's
you
all right, though.
see everything else.
Has anyone ever explained what is obscene about the belly button? Doesn't almost everybody have
It's the gateway to something more, I guess. I don't know. First the belly button, tomorrow God knows what.
Oh, yes, it's the sequence theory of conspiracy theory or whatever.
They used to give me really hassle all the time with everything that I wore, and then right after Charlie's Angels went on, and I mean, you know, it was like everything was showing.
Today, those things look conservative in the show's in syndication and reruns, I think, isn't it? Are you superstitious at all? It seems to me almost everybody in the business is.
No.
That's a relief.
I figure what's going to happen is going to happen one way or another.
Yeah. Did Sandy Dennis tell you that she and I were in high school together?
No, but you did.
Did I? Did I tell you a number of times?
No, you just told me once, and I asked you, what was she like?
That's right. It seems like months ago.
Yes, it was only 10 minutes.
Sandy and I, no, I was not. Now, tell the truth.
It was 40 minutes ago.
40 minutes ago.
All right. Well, I know when you get older,
right.
things, you lose your perspective.
Yeah, time begins to telescope after a while. Sandy and I were maybe the only two people in Lincoln High School in Lincoln, Nebraska, who consistently could not get a date or sat home on Saturday night and watched show of shows while everybody else went to football games and stuff.
But don't you believe...
I mean, we didn't know each other.
I know,
except
but don't you believe that... I know a lot of people that weren't popular in school or weren't the, you know, the considered beauty or whatever, but it really spurs people on to achieve things, you know? I mean, a lot of those football players are sitting at home now, you know, drinking beer, watching television.
Do you buy that? Do you think if you'd been born into a sort of normal middle-class family and been the cheerleader and Queen of the May and
I think so,
president of
because
the class,
I have to prove myself constantly, just to make sure that I'm doing something.
Do you think you're attractive?
In a strange sort of a way.
Is it really?
Yes.
Yeah. You are, I can assure you. I don't want to cast any... You have to have large breasts in this play, don't you?
Yes.
Is it true that weightlifting can...
I mean, unless I could bench press 1,000 pounds.
Is that something odd to get used to? Because I guess you wear rubber padding or something.
Yes, I do.
To suddenly have...
Yes, because I go to
visible
fold
where
my
you are
arms.
before.
Now here, you know, I've got no problem folding my arms. When I fold my arms on these guys, my arms are like up there. I feel like I'm a Russian Cossack or something all the time.
Well, you aren't a Cossack, but you are delightful. And can you tell from that corny wording that we've come to the end of another
you've run out of time
hour?
again.
Thank you, Cher, and please come back. And why have you had your fingers crossed through all of these lies you've been feeding me? See you next time.
This week in 1972, The Godfather was released. Dick Cavett interviews the star, Marlon Brando, tomorrow on Decades.